Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Alex Salakis, and I'm part of the TTA communications team. Thank you for joining us today on our presentation titled Better Driver Training is the Key to Business Growth. We'd like to thank our partner who's joined us today, Joe Rubino, for giving this presentation. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. You can join the conversation anytime by pressing the raised hand button on your Zoom account, or muting yourself, or using the chat feature below. We also encourage you to turn on your camera to join this discussion. If you would like to ask any questions, feel free to use the chat feature or just speak up. We'll be monitoring questions sent to us either to the group chat or direct messages to us, and we'll pose those throughout the presentation. And finally, just as a note, this webinar is being recorded. So with that, let's give a warm welcome to Joe, and we'll let him take it away. Joe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alex. Well, you can see from the title, we're going to talk about driver training. And you'll notice the second part of that sentence is it's the key to business growth. If you run a for-hire company, whether it's a taxi company, shuttle company, jitney company, livery company, sedan company, whatever it is, your key to success is revenue. And your revenue is derived by the money your drivers bring in. What we're going to talk about in this particular webinar is how to sustain a driver fleet by retaining drivers, because without retention, you have no growth. So we're going to talk about how to retain drivers through better training. The second thing I wanted to tell you about this particular topic is it is part of a series of presentations and documents being provided to Massachusetts operators by the TTA's partnership with the state's business development wing. And what we are doing is providing a series of webinars, a series of business lessons, other articles, some aimed at the drivers as the audience, some aimed as the fleet owners as the audience, which is what we have today. And the goal here is to provide you with valuable deliverables to improve your company. So when you see this webinar, I want you to see it in concert with some of the articles that I've written on the fleet owners a business lesson about how to provide training. I'm doing a total of 3 different lessons. I think one was April, one was May, and the third one is going to be June later this month. When you add that to the other things that have been done by Jeb Corey, Natalie George, and Michael Shabke, you're going to have a lot of free consulting provided to you by the Transportation Alliance. So that's the theme here. So as we go to the next page, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I have been in the business my entire life since 1974. I was previously a journalist, and I was a journalism professor at a college preparatory school. I decided to get into broadcasting I was originally in print journalism, newspapers. I decided to get in broadcasting. I went to broadcasting school. Well, I didn't have any money, so I put myself through school driving a cab. I drove a cab for 2 years while I went through school, and then part-time while I worked in TV and radio, sports, and news reporting. I was making a lot of money as a driver, an enormous amount of money, way more than I was making as a broadcaster. And eventually I was offered a job to join management, so I did. So in 1976, I became a manager of a taxi company in Miami. We eventually put on all different types of vehicles. We put on paratransit vehicles, non-emergency medical vehicles, limousines, couriers, buses, shuttle buses, medical vans, wheelchair lift vans, everything. So I have now 48 years of experience in all of these different genres. So you see my contact information here. I'll talk about that at the end. So I did that from 1976 to 2002. In 2002, I opened up my own firm. For 20 years, I've had this consulting company you see the name of here. I provided consulting to companies all over the country, including quite a few in Massachusetts, all the way from Cape Cod all the way west to Pittsfield, Mass, and all around the Boston area. So I'm really familiar with the operations of the state. Now we go to the next page. We're going to talk about what the heart of this is, which is driver training. Most companies, probably yours, you have empty vehicles in your lot. You hate those empty vehicles in your lot. You hate them as much as a restaurant manager hates empty tables, as much as a hotel manager hates empty rooms. Empty is no good. Somebody in them is good. So what you want is you want vehicles. So why are they empty? And most of the time it's because we can't keep the drivers that we train. Sometimes it's because we can't recruit them well, but other times it's because we get them, but they only last 2 days, a week, 3 months. They can't make any money. So what we're going to do on the next page is we're going to talk about why they're not making enough money. One of the reasons they don't make enough money is because of the way we train them. So if we look at the next page, we'll see the first thing here. You'll see we lose new drivers because of the way we don't train. What that means is, do we really train drivers the best way, or do we just train them the way we've always trained them? So ask yourself this: is there any other industry in the whole world that trains new people the way we do? Think about it. Think of a company that you admire. I don't know, Hilton Hotels, Marriott, Disney, Amazon, McDonald's. Do you think they train people the way that you train your drivers? If a 16, 17-year-old high school kid goes to get a job at McDonald's and he or she is going to be a cashier or flipping burgers, I guarantee you they have a couple of weeks of training. And then after they've started, they get more training. There's side by side. Sometimes you go into a McDonald's or a Burger King or a Wendy's and the cashier has got somebody standing next to them telling them what to do. Well, that means they've started work, but they're still training. So that's a little different a lot of times than what we do. In many companies, they train a driver for a few hours, if at all. A lot of times they just stick them in the car with another driver and they hope the new driver makes it. I used to consult with one of the largest companies in the country. They had about 560 vehicles. They were a very successful company, but they had terrible retention. And one of the reasons was they trained terribly. They hired me to put a new training program in, and I put a training program in that lasted 2.5 days. Well, you know what they did? They complained. They said, Joe, we got to get these guys on the road. We can't train for 2.5 days. I said, why do you have to get the new drivers on the road? They go, we need them out there. I'm thinking, like, you're keeping 1 out of every 10 drivers you have. You're burning through a valuable resource. Why do you keep doing the same thing over and over again? This is insane. You need to invest some training in the drivers. Okay, so if you think you have a good system now, then I ask you, how's it working for you? Okay, so let's go to the next page and let's take a look at some of the themes here. You need a training program that teaches drivers how to make money. It's not enough to teach them how to operate the equipment, how to operate the computer, how to operate the meter if you're using a meter, how to operate a radio if you're using a radio. It's not enough to teach them your zones or how to take credit cards, all this stuff. You need to teach them how to make money. And this is the thing that would normally take them months to learn on their own, but you have to teach them now. So as we go to the next page, we're going to see some more of this information here. When you train, you need to have 3 separate components. Sometimes, like I said earlier, many companies will their training process is, okay, I have a new trainee, you call a driver in, you let him ride with him. That's not training, that's cloning. You know, there's nothing wrong with peer-to-peer training, but that can't be your only training program. All you're doing is you're creating a duplicate of that driver. And how do you know that driver is going to give a good a training program? That driver may not want new drivers in the company. A lot of your current drivers don't want new drivers. They think new drivers hurts them. It's not true, but they think so. So you have to really have a 3-part component. You have to have a classroom style orientation. You have to have an on-the-road training, before the new training begins work, the new recruit begins work. And then the most important part, you have to have training and mentoring after the new recruit has begun work. Remember the young lady at McDonald's, she's working the counter, taking their money, but she's got somebody standing watching her. This is training and mentoring after the new recruit has begun work. Okay, the next page, we're gonna flesh out these ideas even more. You need to present in modular format. Now, I don't know what kind of a company you have. You may have a company where it's you, a dispatcher, and 6 taxis. You may have a company where you have 100 vehicles. You may have a company where you have 1 person in the office. You may have a company where you're the only person in the office. You may have a company where you have 10 people in the office. I don't know. But all I'm saying is you need to have a significant amount of training, but it's going to be very difficult if you have the same person doing all the training. Now, some companies do this. I was just talking the other day to a company in Kansas City in which 1 person provides all the training over the 2 or 3 day period, wherever it lasts. But he breaks it up. He's very interesting. He intersperses videos, does different things, and he happens to be a very entertaining guy. But just imagine if you went to a business conference and you had 1 person talking for 8 hours. You'd be asleep in a couple hours. That's why when you go to conferences, they have a variety of speakers. Each one speaks for a half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. So you want to set up your presentation in modular format. And now here's what the other thing modular format means. Modular format means you have a 3 or 4 hour section of training, but you can do it anytime you want. You can say, okay, we're going to do it every Tuesday and Thursday morning. Or you can say, next week, we're going to do it on Wednesday and Friday afternoon. It modular means it's set up, it's a training, but you can move it and do it different times. It's a module. Okay. In other words, you don't do it every day, and it provides you with a great degree of flexibility. It also gives you the chance for multiple instructors. Now, on the next page, I'm going to talk about what I mean by multiple instructors. You may be saying to me, Joe, I'm a small company. I don't have a lot of people. I got to do all the training. No, you don't. Let me tell you the way that we did some of the training in my office, okay? If you look at my list here, it says you, meaning, your owner of the company, the manager, supervisor, dispatcher, or driver trainer. I had all different people involved in the training. And I did it at the same time all the time. So here's an example. You see there's shop management. I had somebody in the shop, actually a mechanic, who actually made part of the presentation. I'm going to get to that in a couple other pages. But it wasn't a chore for him because we had it at the same time every single week. This particular mechanic knew that he was going to have to do a particular training program, which would last about 30, 40 minutes, but he did it every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 o'clock. And he knew it. He looked forward to it. I'll tell you more about it. Risk management. I used to get people in my risk management office involved in talking about safety. I had people in my call center staff talk about how the dispatch system works. I had my people in my accounting staff talk about how to take charge accounts and how to take charge credit cards. And the next thing, will present the entrepreneurial training? Who's going to be the one to teach people how to make money? Who will present the on-the-road training? Will it be any old driver? Will it be you? Or will it be a select driver? And the training classes can include veteran drivers if you want, if they need remedial training. Okay, more on this subject as we turn the page. There's going to be different parts of the program. Ava, if we want to get the next page there. There we go. Okay, so we want to look at the various segments that you can cut down into 4 hours. I like to have about 2.5 days of training. So my training program was 4 hours one day in the morning, another 4 hours in the afternoon. And then the next day we had 4 hours again, and then in the afternoon, and then the third day, just a couple hours, and then we're done. That was the way I did my training. So in the first 4 hour segment, this was actually done by me if I was available. If I wasn't available, I had one of my top managers do it. And so this was kind of local for hire red. I think they have skipped the page. If you want to go back one, Abe, I think I'm going to, there we go. So the first 4 hours was the explanation of the licensing and training program. In other words, I was explaining to them what we were doing today. I gave them an overview of the company. I explained who I was, who the managers were, and then I talked about the industry. I explained the for hire industry area. I explained to them the concept of independent contractor, because some of these drivers may have been employees at every place they work. At your company, if they're an independent contractor, then you have to explain what independent contractor means. Now, the next two sections, this was what the mechanic did. And let me tell you, it sounds funny to have a mechanic do this, but we had a mechanic. He was a Cuban. My company was in Miami. He was a Cuban guy. He spoke perfect English, perfect Spanish, and he loved to break in his day to do this. And every Tuesday and Thursday, about 10 o'clock, when we had a training class, he would go and take the group, and he would give them a tour. He would leave whatever he was doing. He would grab a bottle of water, a cup of coffee, whatever, and he would just give them a tour of the physical plant. He would literally show them, here's the parking lot. Here's where you park your own car. Here's where you're going to find your taxi. Here's the wash rack. Here's where you gas up if we had gas at that time. Here's how to bring a car into the shop. He basically explained to them everything about the property, the building, show them where the bathrooms are. I mean, literally how to do everything there. Then when it says vehicle hands-on training in the parking lot, he didn't teach them things like the meter and the radio. What I mean by that is he taught them about, this is a taxi cab. He taught them about the gauges. He taught them how to read gauges in a car, how to understand when you were getting if you got this thing on your dashboard, what this meant. He taught them actually showed them how to open up the hood. If they needed to, if they had a problem when they were driving, they need to check underneath the hood for fluids or whatever the case might be. He showed them how to change a spare tire, okay, which a lot of drivers don't know how to do. He showed them how to, everything about the car. He showed them how to look for warning signs in the car, sounds the car might be making, what this meant, taught them to recognize problems in the car. So he did a great job on that. And then the last thing was we did the dispatcher call center observation session. What that meant was every one of our drivers, before they started work, spent some time in the call center dispatch room. Now, I don't know what kind of call center you have. You may have computer dispatch and only a few people in the office just monitoring things. You may have a live dispatch component. You may have automated dispatch, but you may have somebody there answering phones, whatever. I always wanted the drivers to see what it was like for the people in the office. Sometimes drivers think they're being ignored if they have a problem. I wanted them to see what the people in the call center were dealing with, so they would understand that sometimes they're as busy as you are. Okay, we can go back to that next page now. Next page, we would then be, let's say, in the afternoon of that first day. And I usually had my trainer explain all this. We were lucky that we had a full-time trainer who was able to do this. But when we didn't, we had somebody who was kind of a part-time trainer. What he was a dispatcher who worked on a second shift. And on training day, he came in and he did the training and he just got paid extra on those days. But you can figure out how somebody can do this training. You can do it yourself. You can even, I've seen some companies where they have a really, really good driver who had some kind of a position, position in the past where they were in management, or they had a professional career and now they're driving for a living, but they had presentation skills. So that driver would actually come off the road and do the whole training class, just like a person working in the office. So it depends on what your resources are. I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm telling you have to cover all of these specific issues. Local for hire regulations, your company protocols, the rules and regulations your company follows. Compliance issues. Sometimes we would bring HR staff in there, like somebody who would have to help drivers get their hack license, or help drivers get their insurance requirements, or help drivers pass their physicals. Whoever in your company does that might be a good person to present. And again, in my company, we had the same person do it all the time. She knew that every Tuesday at 11 o'clock, she'd have to come in and do like a 20-minute presentation, but it was on her schedule. Okay, if we didn't have anybody, she stayed in her office. But if we had people, she came over to the training room, made a 20-minute presentation, it went back. But having different speakers in there just made it more interesting. And drivers all of a sudden paid attention when somebody else got in front of the room and started presenting. Somebody else should make a presentation of the local area. You know, a lot of new drivers come to you and they don't know much about the area. Maybe they live in South Boston, they don't know more North Boston. Maybe they live in Springfield and they're trying to work in the Eastern End. I mean, who knows where what the situation is, but don't assume everybody who comes in to drive for your company knows the geographic area. You have to explain these kind of things. What are traffic patterns? What areas are busy in the morning? When should you stay off the interstate? When should you stay off certain roads, so on and so forth. Also, instruction of use of GPS. When I say use of GPS, just because people know how to operate a GPS doesn't mean they know how to understand it. So I would use maps if you have maps available, or at least teach them mapping software. Okay, let's go to the next. Let's go to the next page. Somebody's going to have to explain how the company's dispatch component works. You need to train somebody on the equipment. Excuse me. I have a little bit of a cold. Sorry about that. Whatever equipment you have, taximeter, mobile computer, handheld tablet, smartphone app, credit card processing, two-way radio, whatever. All communications protocols must be taught. You need to have somebody teach drivers on how to do charge accounts. G2B, that means you have a government to business account. So that would be a Medicaid account or a paratransit account. B2B means business to business. So let's say you have an account in a local hotel to take people to the airport, a local hospital, local school system. So there's business to business accounts, there's government to business accounts. Okay, we go to the next page. You must teach drivers business development techniques. And you have to select somebody really good for this. In other words, whoever teaches this has to know this stuff. So you have to have somebody to teach drivers, here's how you build business. Now, you build business in two tiers. You should build business for the company. That means every time you get a person in your car, you want them to use your company again. So you're building business for the company, and in doing so, you're going to get some of that. The second thing is, because you're an independent contractor, you're allowed to build business for yourself. So when I was a taxi driver, it was before the age of cell phones, unfortunately, but what I would do is I had a little business card, and on the front of it was the company's name of the company, which in my case was called Metro Taxi, and had Metro Taxi's phone number and all that stuff. And on the back side, I had my own name and phone number. I'm sorry, I didn't have my phone number because I didn't have a cell phone. But what I did was I said, ask for me. So what I did was I was saying, in my company at the time I drove, we had a procedure that you could ask for a particular driver. Of course, nowadays with drivers having their own cell, they can hand out a business card for people to contact themselves. There's nothing wrong with you building your own business. So you need to learn business development techniques. Now, the other thing is passenger assistance training. What this means, there's two aspects here. One is the customer service aspect. I was old school. I opened the door for everybody. And I still see cab drivers today who do that. I don't laugh at them. I commend them, and they get a much better tip from me because nobody's doing it. Nobody's opening doors anymore. Everybody does the Uber style now. You just pull up and want to hop in. Well, that's fine if you want to do that. But you know what? When I drove a cab, I wanted to be perceived as better than anybody else. I wanted to think, wow, this guy just opened the door for us. So I encourage drivers to this day to do passenger assistance. Now, the other type of passenger assistance is actually if a person is elderly, disabled, or infirm, sick. Now, in my company, what we used to do was when we did passenger assistance training, we didn't just explain it from the customer service end. We explained it from the passenger who needed assistance if they were elderly disabled. One of the reasons was because we have a lot of charge accounts. My company did a lot of Medicaid, did a lot of paratransit. So the chances of you taking a disabled or elderly person was very high. So what we taught was how to help people through role playing. And what that means is when you attend this training, our training class, we actually put you in the position of not only the driver helping the passenger, but as the passenger being helped by the driver. So what we would do is let's say we had 6 drivers in the training class. We would put pairs of 2. And you would actually start by wheeling your partner in a wheelchair up to the taxi and helping them get into the wheelchair if they were a transferable person. And then you would fold up the wheelchair and put in the trunk of the taxi. If they were in a cane or a walker, you'd help them as well. Then when you were done with that, you would get in the wheelchair and they would push you, and you would then portray the role of the elderly person being transferred in there. So we wanted you to sit in the shoes of the passenger to see what it was like. It was always very helpful. Okay, we can go to the next page. Utilization of videos. Now, you can intersperse these videos as many times as you want and many days as you want. What I did was I always broke up the monotony of people talking by putting in a video. Now, in our company, we use 3 different videos. One was we had an actual video, believe it or not, of how to actually be a cab driver, and it was actually put out by this organization, the Transportation Alliance. It's a bit dated. It was made back in I think the early 90s, so it won't work now, but my company used to use that. We also used the safe driving video from the National Safety Council. These are great videos, and the ones that we used were the kind of, it's like you're watching an hour TV program, and then at certain you would see it from the perspective of you being the driver, and then you would actually be presented with a difficult situation, and then the video would stop, and the narrator would say, "What would you do now?" And you'd actually have to answer the question. You know, we gave you a little test sheet, and then once you did your answer, then we started the video. The video would start again, and then you would see what you should have done if that wasn't your choice. Then we also had safety training videos, and those were things created by we used the one recommended by the Smith System. It's a company out of Dallas, Texas. There's lots of different training videos, but we think you should train your drivers to be safe drivers, and specifically for safety training, and also training how to use passengers. We even used a video by the Braun Company that showed drivers how to handle people and put them on a lift. Some of our taxis were ones with ramps. We actually had a lot of other vehicles in our company that had lifts on it. These were used for other reasons. So there's lots of other videos. The next thing you do want to talk about is behind the wheel training. This is generally taught by a mentor driver. You can call them driver trainings. We call them mentors, and we really were very careful with the drivers we used. We recruited drivers. We didn't just take drivers who volunteered. We recruited drivers. We wanted our best drivers doing this training. Just because a driver is a good driver doesn't mean they're a good trainer. So you want to make sure that people that do your behind the wheel training, your side-by-side training where the trainee rides with the trainer, you want to make sure that's a really good person. And then they will test them for their driving skills, instrumentation. Instrumentation, I mean, not the meter and the radio and stuff. This is the actual stuff inside the car. And as I mentioned earlier, our mechanic used to cover instrumentation, actually. Okay, we can go to the next slide now. The final session, you want to talk about putting the new driver on the road, getting to sign their lease agreement, assigning to a vehicle, getting their first lease payment, the formality of putting them on the road. But you have to, at this point, transition into the ongoing mentoring that will occur after they start. So if you look on the right side of the screen, the black background, the white type, even with the best training, new drivers often struggle. Most drivers will quit in the first 2 to 12 weeks. You know that. I'm not telling you something you don't know. But so to overcome this, you need to provide them with ongoing training and mentoring after they begin work. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about how we do that. You want to become advocates for your drivers. These are your independent contractors. You are not their boss. They are your business partner. Okay? You provide, in this business relationship, if you are leasing out taxis or sedans or however you do in your company, perhaps you have employee drivers, maybe you do, but most likely if you're running for hire vehicles, you probably have some type of a lease or a rental or something of that nature. So you're providing them with services and they provide you with a weekly fee. They're paying you $400, $500, $600, $700. I have a couple of clients getting almost $800 a week for their leases. So to make sure that that you continue to collect this money, you need to create a mentoring program to help drivers once they start work. Because the first few weeks are the critical time, and each new driver has to be monitored. So on this next slide, we're going to talk more about the details of how to do this monitoring. So what you want to do is you want to create a regular event for fledgling drivers already on the road. And what it means is after the drivers start, you want to bring them all back for some regular event. Now, I have clients who do this in a lot of different ways. I have one who does it in a very simple way. If you've ever been to McDonald's, when you walk into a McDonald's, there's usually to the right, there's usually this area that nobody sits in because the bathrooms are over there. And then you keep going into the counter and most people sitting on the left. Well, this area in the front is near the bathrooms is usually kind of empty. You go in there around 10 o'clock in the morning, 10:30. So what my client does is he has all of his new drivers meet there every I can't what day of the week it is, I can't remember. Let's say it's a Wednesday morning. Every Wednesday morning at 10:30. And they go in and he buys everybody a cup of coffee and an egg McMuffin or whatever he does. He spends a couple of bucks on each driver. And then he either makes a presentation himself or he brings somebody on to speak. And so what it is, and of course he talks to the McDonald's manager about this. It's not like McDonald's is being surprised. McDonald's is grateful to have, a bunch of business, every Wednesday morning, because not only is he buying stuff for the people, a lot of these drivers will buy stuff from McDonald's to take with them. So it's a boost for business for McDonald's. So it's kind of a range thing. And what he does is if he has 6 people, 8 people, whatever, he makes a presentation. The presentation is not important. It's who the speaker is not important. It's just the fact what you wanted. The whole purpose of this meeting is to keep your new drivers coming back, finding out what their problems are, finding out what they're talking, and they're not only can talk to you, they can talk to each other. So in other words, all the new drivers. So the new drivers are sitting there talking, and if one guy has a problem, his buddy who attended training class with him 2 weeks ago, he's telling, oh, here's how I do that. So they learn from each other. Your presentation can be about anything. It can be about, okay, there's a football game this week, and here's how you can, go to Foxborough Stadium. Here's the best place to park, whatever. You can talk about, how to work on a rainy day or work in the snow. It doesn't make a difference. Who the speaker is and what they talk about is not important. Just getting them there. Okay, the next page, we're going to talk about the nitty gritty here. You need to provide an individual mentor to each new driver. In other words, each new driver gets a mentor. Now, what I call it is big brother, little brother. And I've done this all over the place. The big brother is the current driver who's a successful driver. The little brother is the new driver. Could be big sister, little bigger, little sister, big brother, little sister, doesn't matter. Obviously, this is just words. But your point is every new driver is a mentor. Now, the mentor needs to be a successful cab driver. Needs to be somebody who has a good attitude. Needs to be somebody who has a business mentality, who is a good communicator. Now, at this weekly event, I would invite the big brother too. Everybody wants free breakfast. Why not? You can have, and then the big brother and little brother, they can meet privately before or after the meeting, or let the big brother manage the process on his own. But the point is, every Wednesday at 10:30, my client who does this McDonald's thing, he's getting his new drivers together with their mentors. And there's a lot of business, a lot of stuff exchanged. If any driver is struggling, they're given the information they need. Okay, let's go to the next page. This is the key. This is the key to the whole thing. The big brother has got to be paid. Now, I use the word paid. What I mean is compensated. You're not going to get somebody to do this for free. Do not worry about the money you spend giving to the mentor. Okay, because every new lease is found money. Let me ask you a question. If you spend all this money to hire a new driver and they quit after 3 weeks, what good is all the money you paid? It's wasted. What if the driver stays for 3 years? A little better, right? What if the driver stays for 10 years? A little better, right? So you're investing money. Now, one of the keys is the way I did at my company was I compensated the big brother for 6 months. Yes, yes. Because here's why I did it. Because I said to myself, if the new driver lasts 6 months, they're going to last 6 years. Most drivers are quitting before that 6 month period. So if I can get them to 6 months, they'll probably stay. So here's the example. Let's say the lease is $500. Let's say the lease that you collect from drivers is $500 a week. Give the big brother 25 bucks. Well, you think it's a lot of money. So what? over 6 months, you will only have paid the little brother $650. That's 26 weeks times 25 bucks is $650. But the little brother will have paid you 13,000. Not a bad investment, right? We had a situation where the big brothers could have as many little brothers as they want. Believe it or not, I had one mentor who had 27 little brothers. Now you think that's crazy, right? It's not, because they didn't all start at the same time. They started over 24, 25 different weeks. But what would happen is his little brothers were making money after 2 or 3 weeks. So if he had 27 little brothers, he was only working with 4 or 5 or 6 of them. The rest were all, at a time, the rest were all doing well. Okay, so think about it. Okay, if he has, let's say your big brother has 3 little brothers, 25 bucks a week for each one, or 4 little brothers, 25 bucks for each one. In 6 months, you're going to pay that big brother $39,000 to $52,000. But look what you're getting. I'm sorry, $1,950 to $2,600 is what I meant. But look what you're getting back. You're getting back almost 40 to 50,000 bucks. Think about it. Can you invest 2,000 bucks in the stock market and get back 40,000? I don't think so. But you can do it with a big brother, little brother program. You're paying him out of. You ever hear the term using house money? House money is when you're a gambler and you win money, and now you take the money you won and you take back the original money you put in. Now you're playing with the house's money. That's the same thing here. If you're paying the guy 25 bucks a week and he's producing a $500 lease every week, so what? You're clearing 465 from a driver who might have quit. All right, so this is the key. A big brother, little brother program. Okay, I think there's one more page here. And this is just my contact information. Anybody who wants to question me about any of these concepts that I've talked about here, please, you got my phone number, you got my cell, you can text me, you got my email, you got my website. All right, I am a resource. As part of this program with the TTA in Massachusetts, I provide communication with people who see my presentations or read my business lessons. Any questions, call me, it's not a problem. All right, I'm all wrapped up at this time. And thank you everybody for listening. And Alex, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Joe. That was really, really insightful. Went over a lot of really good info. So thank you. We had a couple of questions messaged to us. One of the questions touched on training drivers. I saw the message said, I saw that there was a point in one of your slides where you said you can train veteran drivers too. I was just wondering if you could talk about, do you train both new drivers and then drivers that have been with companies for a little while too?
Well, what we mean by that is, let's say you have a driver who was trained, they're out there, they're been out there for 6 months, a year, whatever, but you've gotten complaints about them. You've gotten complaints that from the billing, from your accounting department, they're not doing their charge vouchers correctly. Or you got a complaint from customer service that they're being rude to passengers. Or you got a complaint that they're not communicating with the dispatcher well. Or you got a complaint that they're abusing the vehicles, whatever. So you can actually use your ongoing training program, which is, remember how I've set this up. You're going to do this in modular format. Certain training is going to be done at the same time every week, and certain people are only involved for that hour. So you have a person, the mechanic, he's working as a mechanic all week, but twice a week for half hour, he does the tour of the building, like I said, okay? So if you have a person who is poor in any given subject and needs remedial training and he's in your fleet, bring him back for that particular training. So if he's having problems with his charge vouchers, you bring him into the training where the person in the back office trains about that. If you're having problems with a driver who's abusing vehicles, bring him in for the part where the mechanic talks him how to watch for warning signs in the vehicle, maintain the vehicle properly. If you have a person who is having complaints about how they're treating passengers, bring them in for the customer service, passenger assistance, role-playing section. That's what I mean is, you're gonna have this all the time. You don't need to, in some companies, they're very reactive. Every time you have a problem, well, that's when they deal with it. Well, you can't, that's called crisis management. You have to be proactive management. You have to have the stuff available all the time. So if you set up the stuff in modular format, it's not going to be just usable for new drivers. It's going to be usable for drivers in your fleet that are having problems and need remediation.
Great. That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. One other question we received is a two-part question. If there's one piece of advice you can give to a new driver, what's that piece of advice? And then if there's a struggling veteran driver, what's one piece of advice you can give them?
Well, the biggest thing I would give to new drivers is don't listen to drivers who aren't making any money. One of the problems you have in the for-hire business, particularly the taxi company, is you have a lot of drivers that are just poor drivers, bad attitudes. They don't have a progressive view of things. They're set in their ways. They think they're smart. They think they're right. And in reality, they're complaining all the time because they can't make a living anyway. And then on the other hand, you have drivers who make money. So you have the drivers who are hacking away at $35,000 a year and the other guys that are pulling in $75,000, $80,000 a year. If you are a new driver, don't listen to the guy who's making $35,000 a year and complaining all the time. Listen to the guy who's making $75,000 or $80,000 a year and has a sunny approach to life. Choose who you listen to, because some people are very positive and some people are very negative. Avoid negativity. And then what was the second part of your question? That was the one part.
Just if there's a piece of advice you would give a veteran driver, somebody on the other side of the.
Yes, that's a good question as well. On a veteran driver, you have to get out of the rut you're in. In other words, if you're a veteran driver and you're asking for advice, what does that mean? That means you're not doing well. Because if you're doing well, you're not asking for anybody for advice, you're giving advice. So one of the problems we had was that people were stuck in their ways. Some drivers will, they don't like to do charge trips because they don't get a tip. Or they don't like to take groceries because they hate carrying groceries and it's only a $5 fare. They don't like taking old people because they don't tip, or you got to walk them up. You got to stand there in the rain while they're walking with their walker. Some people don't like to take different things or work different areas. There's some drivers that every time they do something, they come back to the same area. So I just say, if you're not making enough money to satisfy your needs and to satisfy your desires, you have to change something. I mean, there is a cliche that is used all the time, and that is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. Well, the reason it's used all the time is because it's true. If you want different results, you have to do something different. You can't get better results by doing the same thing. And sometimes it's getting out of what I call your comfort zone. Getting out of your comfort zone means venturing into areas of town you're not familiar with geographically. What I used to do is here's the way I did this. When I was an early driver, I lived in the Fort Lauderdale area, which is north of Miami. I didn't live in Miami. I didn't know downtown Miami I didn't know much about Miami at all, because I lived in Fort Lauderdale, which was 25, 30 miles away. So the way I learned Miami was when I got a trip to a far area, I didn't just hop on the expressway and drive back. I tried to work that area. I saw if the dispatch needed me there, and then I drove around a little bit. I never got on interstates when a taxi driver, never. I always took the streets because unless the passenger was in a hurry, I always wanted to see the neighborhood. I wanted to see areas. This is where this is. I never knew this was here. I've heard about this restaurant. I didn't know where it was, that kind of thing. So learn other areas geographically and then try to start taking different kind of trips. If you're a driver who sits at the airport line all the time or sits in front of a hotel all the time and you're not making any money, well, it's probably because you're just sitting in front of the hotel. Talk to somebody in your company, So conversely, if you're an owner of a company watching this and you have drivers that are in a rut, encourage them to get out of your rut, because if you see a new driver that has gotten into a rut, particularly by listening to another driver, get them out of that habit right away, or else they're going to be quitting on you.
Great. That's fantastic. I believe that's all the time we've got for questions. So I just want to thank you again, Joe, for giving such a terrific presentation. Lots and lots and lots of great info in there. So it's really, really appreciated. Just want to let those viewers know that if you have any questions, just feel free to email us at info@thetransportationalliance.org. And just wanted to leave you with a few pieces of info before we wrap up. The first of which is that we have free money available in the form of scholarships for both fleets and drivers. Any Massachusetts fleet could take advantage of this for a number of courses, from safety trainings to non-emergency medical transportation credentialing. To learn more about this, go to ridelocalma.org and click on for fleet operators or for drivers. And it's really, really important that you act soon because when the money runs out, there are no more scholarships. One more thing we wanted to highlight was that TTA's 104th annual convention is rapidly approaching. TTA's convention, Mobilize 2022, will be taking place from October 31st to November 2nd at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. We're greatly looking forward to meeting new friends and connecting with old ones. Registration is available online now. You can go to thetransportationalliance.org to register, or you can shoot us an email at info@thetransportationalliance.org and we'll help set you up. With that, I just wanted to thank Joe for giving his fantastic presentation today and thank everybody that watched. Thank you and have a good rest of the day.